Hello, this is Zach doing a little poetry. I know I used to do this back in the height of the pandemic a lot more with Poetry Lockdown. I wrote a poem this morning, and I usually will rarely like write a poem in the morning and say, "Yeah, I want to share this with people tonight." But as you'll see, this is what I would call kind of an occasional poem. It's occasioned for me trying to honor the life of Martin Luther King Jr., who was assassinated 54 years ago tonight. And so, yeah, I thought in my mind that actually, I want to share this poem. So I'll read it, and then also as part of this little video, I just want to share three books for me are in some ways talking to this poem or have inspired this poem. So this is going to be raw and messy. It's kind of experimental, but I like leaning into imperfection, and I've felt a desire to share the poem. So thanks for listening. And it starts with a quote from James Baldwin. The poem's called Today. This is from Baldwin. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. King would be 93 today on the 54th anniversary of his murder. And Baldwin is truer than ever, arrows coming home to hearts soft enough to be pierced, vulnerable enough not to wear armor. America, why not listen for once to a prophet? Why not profit from the instruction of a teacher who knows? America the cynical, be beautiful today. America the amnesiac, be memorious today. It is April 4th, 2022, and Easter won't be for another 2 weeks, but I say, let's look on who we crucified here. Let's roll away some stones here. Let's let Holy Week start today. All right, thanks for listening. That was my poem. And if you ever watched any of my Crazy Poetry Lockdown videos last year, I like to talk a little bit about the poem or about kind of what inspired the poem. So I just wanted to mention three books that I've been reading over the past 3 or 4 months that I would highly, highly recommend. As you can see, my poem is in some way talking back to history. I'm especially honestly thinking about teachers. As a teacher, you are probably well aware of the what I would say is opposition to truth telling and to history in our schools. And so if you want to read a book that speaks truth to that energy, highly recommend this. The 1619 Project, Nicole Hannah-Jones. She is kind of the editor of this incredible anthology, terrific Black scholars and writers and artists. And not only does it have these terrific essays, which kind of start from 1619, the year the first slave was sold in Virginia, and it goes all the way through to today, but it's also interwoven with poetry, with fiction. It's an incredible book. And actually, there was a line in there talking about the Easter week uprising in 1968 when King was assassinated, and that's kind of was a touch point for the start of my poem. Great book, totally recommend it. I also want to note this book. Oh my goodness, James H. Cone. So, a big part of the audience, honestly, for this poem that I just wrote is white Christians like me, and Cone is really speaking about if you want to understand what the crucifixion means, look to the lynching tree in the history of the United States. I just want to read one quote from near the end of this book. It's incredibly powerful. This is James Cone, The Cross and the Lynching Tree. Cone says, "As I see it, the lynching tree frees the cross from the false pieties of well-meaning Christians. When we see the crucifixion as a first century lynching, we are confronted by the reenactment of Christ's suffering in the blood-soaked history of African Americans. Thus, the lynching tree reveals the true religious meaning of the cross for American Christians today. The cross needs the lynching tree to remind Americans of the reality of suffering, to keep the cross from becoming a symbol of abstract, sentimental piety. Before the spectacle of this cross, we are called to more than contemplation and adoration. We are faced with a clear challenge, as Latin American liberation theologian John Sobrino has put it, to quote, "Take the crucified down from the cross." That's from the concluding chapter of James Cone's terrific book, The Cross and the Lynching Tree, which also in the background of the poem that I share with you. And then finally, in the background of so many of my poems, deep inspiration to me mentor and friend Joseph Brown's book, To Stand on the Rock, Meditations on Black Catholic Identity. This is a terrific book and explores through historical, artistic, sociological, and poetic means Black Catholic identity, as the title says. And I feel like, it would be nice. So I started with my poem. I want to end with in one of the early chapters of this book. It's called "Been in the Storm So Long." Father Brown is kind of doing like a poetic, analytical, historical dance. I mean, you can even look at the page. There's some of his poetry. There's like historical text. I'm doing a bad job sharing my screen. Technologically challenged. But there's this section of poetry that haunts me in good ways. So I'm going to read that as a close. Thanks for tuning in. Here's some Father Brown to close us out. Anybody asks you who you are, who you are, who you are. Anybody asks you who you are, tell them I'm a child of God. A long ways from home. A long ways from home. Thank you, Father Brown. Thanks, James Cone. Thanks, Nicole Hannah-Jones, and all the amazing scholars of the 1619 Project. Hope you enjoyed my poem. Thanks for tuning in. Peace.